Hi everyone, my name is Alex Rossow, and I'd like to begin this week by sharing my world behind the text presentation. So let's jump in and get started with it. My world behind the text presentation will focus on the urbanization movement that happened or occurred during the Bronze and Iron Age and the impact it had on ancient Israel. And the concept of urbanization is best seen on this side is a shift in population from a rural area to an urban area. This was best seen by the establishment of the United Monarchy during the reign of Saul. And it's seen as the trajectory from the book of Genesis on in the Old Testament. Urbanization led to a network of small-scale city-states of roughly equal size who were who pursued a course of competition with one another. They also wanted to emulate one another. They had intensive contact with one another. This contact was sometimes peaceful, it was sometimes violent. Social interactions between these city-states and the countryside around were mostly ambivalent. City-states built fortifications around their towns to segregate and protect themselves from other city-states, and also the semi-nomadic or tribal groups who were roaming around the city walls. Cities were also seen as the principal seats of power by the Egyptians, who at the time of ancient Israel heavily influenced the Levant. Life of the semi-nomadic Israelites was in sharp contrast to those who were dwelling in small-scale city-states at the time. Israel gradually moved to a monarchy, and many of the aspects of the social and economic order of the tribes would be eliminated as time progressed. One can draw some insightful conclusions about the social and economic life of the ancient Israelites, especially roughly around 1200 BCE. And through my research, these are some of the conclusions that I came to. Religion was an expression that bonded the tribes together. The mode of living was more simple and frugal than city-states. There was no uniform political body. Competition, rivalry, and warfare existed between the tribes. Each tribe had its own unique history. Common law acknowledged man as the property owner. They oftentimes joined in common cult feasts with one another. And law operated on the basis of what had been done was considered law, and what had not been done was considered unlawful. There was also a diminishing amount of land during this transition as tribes settled into certain areas, and they also began passing land down through their familial lines. A person, or should I say, a man's land and house were considered to be an inalienable right. The combination of a family's assets and how the law operated within these semi-nomadic communities significantly contributed to the environment in which we see women participating in the book of Genesis. We see this in the story of Lot in the people of Sodom. Lot's family was positioned on the periphery of society because of its urbanization, one could propose. Urbanization acted as a way to segregate and protect the city from the transient nomadic population roaming the countryside. So I ask you this. How would one navigate the complex societal and economical limits placed on tribes or semi-nomadic people by those dwelling in cities? I'd suggest tribes interacted frequently with one another as they moved around city-states. The countryside often felt chaotic as different powers came in contact with the semi-nomadic tribes. The chaos was magnified through the experience of urbanization and counter-urbanization, which was moving away from the city, as these powers interacted with the tribes. Oftentimes, they were on the periphery of the city and marginalized. It is in this world that many of the stories we read in the book of Genesis regarding women took place. And so this leads to the second question that was on this slide. Is use of power outside of traditional power considered trickery, or is it a profound use of intellectual capabilities of women to exert their influence on the tribe? And so let's kind of keep those questions in mind as we turn to some biblical stories. The first one is of Rachel. Rachel employs woman's most physical source of femininity, the Woman's Bible Commentary says, and that is the dangerous and polluting power of menstruation. She does this to hide teraphim from Laban in Genesis 31. Tribal law would have said Laban had authority over the teraphim because it was a household good or a household asset. Laban's power is undermined by Rachel's clever exploitation of that which makes her most markedly female. Covert woman's power in this one brief scene dominates man's overt authority. The woman in ancient Israelite literature who would succeed almost must be a trickster, the commentary goes on to say. They must follow the path typical of the marginalized. Yet so clever is this trickster, so strong and sure, so completely superior in wisdom to the men around her, that she seems to be the creation of a woman storyteller, one who is part of a male-centered world and is not in open rebellion against it, but who nevertheless subverts its rules indirectly. Another example is that I wanted to bring attention to is not a biblical figure, but she is Jyn Erso from the movie Rogue One, who is what is part of the Star Wars movies. And in this movie, Jyn devises a plan to steal the plans to the Death Star, but is brushed aside, and all hope is lost for the rebels. Jyn, like Rachel, propels her people to action by her persistence and dedication to the task started by her family. The rebel leaders, called the Alliance Council, feel tricked when Jyn persuades others to lay siege and get the plans to the Death Star. Jyn, like Rachel, uses covert power to dominate the overt authority and power of those who are in positions of power. A trickster is someone who is good at developing relationships or seeks something for their own benefit, at least how I understand it, or modern interpretations might be. Another way to interpret it might say that they see a relationship as a means for their own end. The Woman's Bible Commentary has a different take on what a trickster is, and I'm going to read that to you now. One of the biblical author's favorite narratives pattern is that of a trickster. Israelites tend to portray their ancestors and thereby to imagine themselves as underdogs, as people outside the establishment who achieve success in a roundabout, irregular ways. One of the ways the marginalized confront those in power and achieve their goals is through deception or trickery. The improvement in their status may be only temporary. For to be a trickster is to be of unstable status, to be involved in transformation and change. In Genesis, tricksters are found among Israelites sojourning in foreign lands, among younger sons who would inherit, and among women. And so I'd like to begin to conclude this presentation by asking you these two questions. Are these examples of trickery, as it is dubbed by the patriarchal writers of the Bible, or are they the stories of women who are smart, courageous, and adaptive, who did not fit in the box Israelite society put them in? And then, how do these stories in this presentation inform your definition of trickery? Do these stories expand society's definition of a trickster as someone who seeks something or a relationship for their own benefit? I look forward to seeing all of your videos, and I hope to and will learn and gain important knowledge through each one of your insights. Talk to you soon. Bye.